I'm not going to show you how to get everything set up in Reason. There are already a lot of videos out there to teach you that. So I'm going to assume that you've already got your sound drivers and control surfaces working, and we'll get started on some workflow stuff. So the first thing I want to show you is preferences. So if you're on a Windows, you go to Edit Preferences. Let's see, I believe on my Mac, it's File Preferences or Reason Preferences. I'm not sure. I can't quite remember. But in the General tab, let's talk about each of these things real quick, and I'll explain what they do. And so hopefully it'll allow you to see what I've got going on, as well as kind of make a decision for yourself as to how you would like things. But I believe this is checked by default when you first install Reason trigger notes while editing. And what this does is in piano roll, if you touch a note or start to draw in a note, a MIDI note that is, it will make the sound. I have mine turned off. I find it to be annoying because a lot of times I'm editing while the loop is playing, and I don't always want to hear beep, beep, beep all the time, or, whatever sound is playing. So I have that turned off. Reduce cable clutter settings. So I have this set to hide all cables. But how this works is if you hit the K key on your keyboard, that is a keyboard shortcut to hide the cables. And so you have several selections here. Show for selected device only, hide auto-routed cables, hide all cables. I just have mine set to hide all cables because a lot of times the back of my rack will get really cluttered, and I like to just have them all hidden. Show parameter value tooltip. So basically when you click a button or hover over a button or a knob or something in one of the devices, it'll give you the value of that button. So I like to have that on because I like to be able to see what the values are. So that's important to me. Okay, this next piece, show automation indication. So if a parameter is automated, if a parameter is automated in the sequencer on your rack device, it will actually be highlighted with a green box. I believe it's green or yellow. I believe it's green. Green box. That helps you to know by looking at your device what has been automated. This for me is super, super important. And as you can see here, I have a file called default.reason. And that is a Reason file that I created and saved. And then you can select a file to create as your template. And I think it's super important, for me at least, to have a template song. And I have my template song open right now, and we'll go through that and talk about it a little bit. But basically, you can set Reason up exactly the way you want it, with the exact devices, the exact patches, the exact BPM, the number of bars that your loop locators are surrounding. Everything can be set up exactly the way that you want it. You can save that file out and save it in a secure location so you don't accidentally delete it. And then just point Reason to that song file to open as your template. So every time you open Reason, it will open exactly the way that you want it. It's super important, and it will speed up getting started, getting working with your music a lot faster. You also have the option to load last song on startup. I usually navigate to that song and open the song from the song file, but that's me. Do however you want, but to me, the having Reason open up a specific template is super super advantageous for me. So down to the miscellaneous, we've got new devices get browse focus. So basically, when you add a new device into your rack or drag and drop a new device into your rack in your browser, it will basically open up the folder for the patches for that device. So if you don't want the browser to migrate away from whatever patches or folders or samples that you have open, you can uncheck that and it will stop opening the patch folder for the new device. Load default sounds in new devices. I have this turned off. Basically, Reason has a set sound for each device every time you load it, and it'll have that sound patch already loaded into the device. Most of the time, I'm creating new sounds from scratch, so it saves me the step of having to reset the device or initialize the device. So I have that checked off just to speed things up for myself. That's a preference thing. Use multi-core audio rendering. I have that selected. Hopefully you know what that means. Self-contained samples when loading from disk. So what this does is this will take the samples and actually store the samples, make a copy of the sample and store that in your Reason file, as opposed to linking to the location of the sample. I like to self-contain the samples simply because if I lose a sample and I've had this happen before where I accidentally deleted a folder that contained a bunch of samples, and then when I go back to open up old songs, it's missing those samples. I always self-contain the samples, and then a lot of times when I save, I'll go to the self-contained settings and just make sure that everything is in fact self-contained. So that's pretty much it as far as preferences go. I'm going to go to my Reason setup and kind of show you how I've got things going on. So I talked previously about the Reason setup and the default file. And let's see, close that. Open a new window and my music. And let's see, where's my default? So here's my default. So I have my default file saved. Now, let's say I wanted to make a change to my default file. All I'd have to do is come to where I have my default file saved, open that file up, and make any changes I needed to, and then save that same file out. And then when I close it and I come back to Reason, all those changes would be made. So one workflow thing that I have, and I understand that not everybody can do this. I built my own PC and made sure that it was had the specs that I wanted. But I have 3 monitors, and so what that means is that I can have one monitor that houses my sequencer, one for my rack, and one for my mixer. And I understand that not everybody can have that. So one set of the most valuable, essential keyboard shortcuts that you can use is F5, F6, and F7. F5 switches to your mixer, F6 switches to the rack, and F7 to your sequencer. Now, if I were to hit F7 again, it would kind of split everything up so that I can see all 3 at once. That would, to me, would be really annoying. But yeah. Another really valuable shortcut is F3. and F3 opens your browser window. And if you have 3 monitors and you hit F3, the browser window will only open up in the window that you have selected. So if you're working in your sequencer window and you hit F3, the other the browser will not open in the other 2 windows. I find that to be really useful because a lot of times I don't want to see the browser window in every single window that I'm working in. I'll talk more about keyboard shortcuts a little later, as there are quite a few to help speed up your workflow and Reason. Right now I'm going to show you how I have my default setup working and how I like to keep things organized. These are just my preferences and how I work best. So it's going to be different for everyone, but maybe these will give you some ideas as to how you want to get things set up. So when I open up Reason, let me go to my rack device or my rack view. When I open up Reason, I usually have 5 devices already set up in my rack. And most of my devices I have set up in their own columns. So each one of these devices gets its own column. And I have 2 devices in the first column, or 3 to 4 devices if you count those, but those are default devices you can't get rid of. So my first device is a Remark. It's a rack extension. I believe it's still free. It was free when I got it. But it allows me to jot in some notes. I usually put my key there. So when I come back to the track later, I have the key right in front of me and I don't have to figure out what key I was playing in when I created the track. I usually work on, 5 or 6 tracks at a time. My second device is a redrum or red drum or red rum, however you want to pronounce it. I use this device in pretty much every single one of my songs. I like it for a few reasons. One, I'm really comfortable with it. It's a lot like hardware drum machine or sampler. 2, it's easy to use. 3, I can get a beat going really quickly. And 4, I can easily change out samples if I, later on in the track want to change out my kick drum. I can do that without then having to go through and edit all of the audio because this works on MIDI. So my next 3 devices each get their own rack column. I do this for organizational purposes. So in column 2, I put all of my effects type sounds, build-ups, snare rolls. I should probably talk about rack 1 or column 1. Column 1 just gets all my drums and percussions. As I said, snare rolls in here, but snare rolls aren't really something that happen constantly throughout the track. So I have those in my effects column. A lot of times I'll put crashes in here too. Noise builds, all kinds of, effects type stuff, type sounds go there. Column 2, I put my bass sounds. Column 3 gets my treble. And then I have another column that I'll start for vocals. In addition to getting their own rack columns, I have a color coding system as well that I use. So for my drums, I use this kind of camouflage green color. For my effects, I use this purple plum color. Bass gets dark blue, and my treble gets light blue. And for my vocals, they get this Kelly green. The reason I do this is so that it doesn't matter where I'm working, whether I'm working in the rack, the sequencer, or the mixer. I can jump from one to the other and kind of see what's going on, know exactly what's what in the song. I also label things a lot, pretty much everything. Um, and that just helps keep me organized. You know, when I have uh, 15 things in my treble column, and 5 things in my bass, and a bunch of stuff in my drums, and a bunch of stuff in my effects, it just kind of helps me to be able to look at things and just automatically separate them and know that, hey, that group of sounds is all bass. That group of sounds is kind of the treble stuff. So you probably noticed by now that I'm using the same device repeatedly. This is because I use the combinator for pretty much every device, or almost every device. If you're not familiar with what a combinator is, it's basically a way to store multiple instruments or devices all inside one nice, neat, tidy device. So if I were to open up my browser, drag a device in, say drag an equalizer, drag stereo imager, drag reverb. Now, if I were to switch over my rack, I've got all these devices, and if I close this, it's all nice and tidy and neat, and I don't have to look at all the wires and see all the devices. I can just store it nice and neat. Keeping things neat and organized in your rack and your sequencer and your mixer is important. It's going to speed up your workflow. You know, it might take you some time to sit there and label things, but that's only a second. And if you come back, reopen your song, you know, a week later, it's going to help you tremendously just to keep organized and get back into the flow of, you know, creating and working on your song, as opposed to, you know, you don't keep things organized, you don't label things. Now when you come back to it, you kind of have to figure out, you know, what's what, where you left off, things like that. So this, to me, I use this all the time. I always use a 6.2 mixer in here as well, in case I have multiple synthesizers, or say I'm splitting out my channel, you know, with something like the crossover in the stereo imager, or another crossover, or however it is. I basically start every device with a combinator and a 6.2 mixer. If the 6.2 mixer isn't enough, I'll switch it out for a 14.2 mixer. But that's pretty much how I do it. So that's kind of it for the rack. However, let's switch over and I'll show you the K quick key. If I hit the K key, it'll hide all of my cables, like I was discussing when we were talking about the preferences. Switch that back. Let's close our browser window. Let's take a quick look at the mixer. So in my default file, I have the EQ, inserts, and sends all minimized. You can maximize them by double clicking. I do this because I usually work in the rack view for these sections. So I have them collapsed so that I can see my input and my dynamic section and fader section, which are the things that I usually work in the mixer view. Okay, so let's go over to the sequencer and talk about some keyboard shortcuts. Let's see, the first set of keyboard shortcuts are QWERTY U. It's the Q, W, E, R, T, Y, U keys. They basically scroll through your tools. So I use these a lot, actually. Goes all the way through. The Alt key, holding down the Alt key in the sequencer view, changes your cursor to a pencil, which allows you to draw in things. And it works that way in the piano roll as well. One really cool thing that I'd like to show you about the razor tool. Let's draw in some clips here real quick. So we'll zoom in. So the razor tool, if you click up in the timeline, it will make a slice down every single clip that you have in at that slice point. This can be super useful for chopping stuff up, especially if you're chopping up a whole, bunch of tracks at once. So yeah, that's super useful. Okay, holding down the Alt key in the timeline area will move your right loop locator to wherever you have it marked. Holding down the Control key will move the left loop locator to anywhere you have it marked. The Shift key will actually move your end song marker. So Alt for the right locator, Control for the left locator, and then Shift for your end song marker. Now, one thing that's really cool about Reason is that it actually allows you to invert your loop locators. And what this will do is, say your playhead's playing along. As soon as it hits the right loop locator, it will jump to the left loop locator. And that's great for, excuse me, that's great if you need to check out, say you've got an alternate version of a build-up, right? And you want to skip the first version, you want to check out the second version. Well, you can essentially just mark the area here where you want to skip. So when your playhead's playing along, it skips everything in between and jumps to the next spot. So that's really helpful a lot of times. Okay, so back to the rack real quick. If we were to hold down the Shift key, let's see, while we drag a device in, it will keep it from auto routing. So I'm not holding down the Shift key now. You can see that it auto routed. Now I will hold down the Shift key and no auto routing. If you're dragging in devices that need a mix channel and you hold down the Shift key, the mix channel will not get created. So just something to remember, but I use this a lot, that feature a lot as well. Let's see. How about we'll drag in a Thor, drag in a guitar amp, drag in effects, drag in distortion. So if I were to just simply drag my line mixer or my line 6 guitar amp down, you can see that my cables are still routed the same way they were before. If I hold down Shift and I move it down, now it reroutes it to in the order that I moved it down to. So if I move this down and hold Shift, it reroutes it again. So while moving items, holding down Shift will auto reroute those items in the order that you moved them in. So holding Shift down when you're dragging out a new item will prevent it from being auto routed, but holding Shift down while moving an item that's already existing will auto reroute that item. So holding down the H key will zoom in with your playhead at the center, or it's zooming into your playhead. And the G key actually zooms back out. So H key zooms in, G key zooms out. The L key turns on and off looping. Super simple. The S key turns on and off snap. Hitting 0 on the number pad once will stop playback. Hitting it twice will take you back to where the playhead was located the last time you started playing. So for example, if I'm playing, I hit 0, it stops it, I hit 0 again, it took it back to where I started, the playhead was when I started playing. If I hit it another time, it will take it back to the beginning of the song. So 0, once for stop playback, 2 for going back to where you started the playhead at, and 3 times for going back to the beginning of the song. Asterisk will play and start recording, and also stop recording. It won't stop play, but it will stop recording. The F8 key will open up your tool window. There's a bunch of sections here that can be opened and closed. The sections I use the most are pitch, the note velocity, and extract note to lanes sections. I use them quite frequently. The extract notes to lanes is especially useful for your drum tracks. So let's close this out and we'll go to our rack view. Switch it over and let's just put in some MIDI here. So I'm going to put in some MIDI. Okay. Now, for my redrum, if I were to copy pattern to track and then I go back to my sequencer, we can see that we now have a clip that contains all the MIDI data or all the MIDI notes for that drum series that I just put into my redrum. Now, if I were to, let's open up my tools window with F8, and I come down to extract notes to lanes, I can click on the explode option and then make sure that my clip is selected and move. And now what it did was it took each note that was in its own basically channel of the redrum machine, and split it into its own clip. I can put them all back together as well. If I click on the track that has multiple note lanes and come up to edit, I can go to merge note lanes on track. Okay, so let's open back up our tool window. The tool window also has the groove settings section. Here you can load groove patches and you can save groove patches, change the timing, the impact, the note length impact, random timing, and ticks. The overdub button adds a new note lane to your track. We also have the alternative take button. And what this normally does is if you're playing and you hit the alternative take, it will automatically mute the lane that was previously active. So let's see, playing alternative take. Let's see if we record alternative take. There we go. So it muted that recording that I previously done. Okay, so let's stop this real quick. Go into our piano roll. Shift and Alt if you have your cursor selected. Shift and Alt. I believe if you are in pencil mode, then it's just Shift. Yeah. So if you're working with your cursor, a lot of times I'm just hitting the Alt key to move to my pencil tool. So Shift and Alt for me. Basically, you can edit only the velocity of the note that's selected. If I'm just editing without the Shift key, I can go through and I can edit all the velocities all together. But with Shift key on, I can only edit the velocity of the notes I have selected. And all other notes are not affected. This is great if you have things stacked so notes are on top of each other. Basically, all you have to do is make sure that you have the notes that you want to edit selected. Hold down Shift and Alt. And now you can edit the velocities for exactly the notes that you want to edit. Shift and or Control and Alt will allow you to edit with using a straight line. So if you wanted a more even progression of note velocity increase or decrease, whatever, or you want to make them all exactly the same, you do that using Control. If you work with your cursor, again, it'd be Control and Alt. If you only want to edit the selected notes in the same manner, you would hold down Control, Shift, and Alt. And now you can make those edits that way. Okay, so let's talk real quick about the regroove mixer. The regroove mixer is something I'm using constantly. It has 4 banks. So we got our banks over here and 8 channels. So that's 32 different channels that you can basically assign a different groove to. I don't know how you would ever need to use 32, but I think the most I've ever used is 4, maybe. Yeah, you can edit your shuffle, your slide, pre-align. You can load patches here in the tool settings. Like I showed you before, you can save patches. You can save patches here. Down here, you can only load them. You can set this to global shuffle and then adjust based off the global shuffle, or just use the global shuffle. Let's see. Once you have, let's say we've got this regroove that we're going to use, I can then come into each channel and I can select a groove to use for that note lane. And if we were to dub, each note lane can have its own groove channel. So, yeah, that's really helpful as well. That way you could have, like, say, the same bass line and you want to see how it sounds with a bunch of different grooves, or you wanted to mix different grooves together. You could assign different grooves, kind of chop up your MIDI notes and have it work that way. So one thing about the regroove mixer is that it does not work for audio clips. However, you can easily bounce out an audio clip. Let's see if I can pull an audio clip real quick. Sound samples. Let's see. I don't really have too many loops, so oh, this would be good. I believe factory sound bank, percussion loop. Should be able to. There we go. So I can drag out a Dr. Octo-Rex loop or a Rex loop as an audio file. So let's say that this was just an audio file that was in my mix and I wanted to apply some groove settings to it. If I double click it, it takes it into edit mode where it's slicing it. So if you ever used, shoot, I can't remember what it's called. Well, if you ever used the Propellerhead Rex file creator software, man, I wish I used to use it a lot too. Anyways, if you ever use that, it's basically slicing it up like that software did. If you right click while it's in edit mode, you can go bounce clip to Rex loop. Then you can bring the clip back into your sequence using an Octo-Rex and apply groove settings to it that way. So just because the regroove doesn't work on audio files doesn't mean that there's not a pretty simple and easy workaround for that. And let's talk about block mode real quick. So block mode, you can also get to block mode with your B key. Now block mode isn't something that I've used very much, although I've been meaning to use it. I kind of forget about it when I'm producing, when I'm creating, because it's not something that I've normally done. But it's a pretty cool feature. So if you're in block mode, let's say you put out your drum, you got your drum clip there, you got like a synthesizer clip there, and a couple note lanes there, maybe some audio there. And let's change this. This shows the ending of your block 1 clip. All right. This little end. If I were to go back to song view and draw in a block clip, you can see that there's this big wide space here, and that is because in block mode, the end of the block was all the way out here. We just want to change that back to where the loop is ending. And now if I go back to song mode, there's no space between my block. Now, back in block mode, you can change what block you're working on. So if I select block 2, now I'm editing in block 2. If I go back to block 1, we can change that to intro. So now when I go back to song mode, it actually says intro. Here I can change what block I'm pasting in or drawing in. All right, so I can come back and do that. Select block 4, block 7. So yeah, let's go back to intro block that we created. Now the cool thing about this is that, say you've got your chorus already done, and you did your chorus in block mode, right? So now you got to place your chorus a couple times in the song, easily done. Let's say on your second chorus though, you want to mute your drums. You can just come through in your block mode and mute the various blocks. Now, because I didn't add any blocks with information, you don't really see anything in there, but it is kind of showing you which of the note lanes has a block by this little second line within the note lane. But like I said, I haven't used block mode, and that's mainly because I just forget about it. So definitely, if you're new to Reason, that might be something that you kind of incorporate into your workflow. Okay, so back to the rack view. I want to talk about buses real quick, or busing or routing. A lot of times in my songs, my bass section will look something like that. It's a bunch of different devices. A lot of times I'll have, 2 devices making up one bass sound, or I'll have the bass line cut up into different bits with different sounds at different sections. But this can get to be, a lot of stuff to work with, especially when your treble looks the same, So many times, actually all the time, I end up routing all of my bass sounds or bass channels into a bus. So you can do that 2 ways. You can do that in either the rack view or the mixer view. A lot of times I like to do it in the mixer view because I can hold shift and select, right click, route to new output bus. Now, every time you create or route to a new output bus, it gets stuck at the bottom of the rest of them. I usually move that up, and then in my rack view, I would move that up as well. Now, just like I have a color coding system for all of my devices, or for my different types of devices or different sounds, I should say, my bass, my treble, my drums, my effects. For my buses, I always color them red. That way I can look in here and I can see, oh, there's my bass bus. I would have my treble bus right here. And so on. That also helps to keep me organized. I can find my buses easy. I know whether or not I have a bus super easy because it's not the same color as the rest of them. I see it's red. It makes it a lot easier. Now let's say, for example, I have these two are both horns. Okay, say I have a trumpet and a cornet playing. And I want to, let's see, I want to bust those two together. All right. So those buses, I color yellow or orange, sorry. And then those buses always get routed automatically to the main bus, or the main pre-bus, I should say, main sub bus. It'll automatically get routed to that main sub bus if these were already routed to that sub bus. If they were not already routed, then I would have to route it to that sub bus. So I keep my main sub buses red and kind of my pre or sub buses orange. And that just kind of helps me to keep things organized. So there are a bunch of benefits to using buses. If we go back to my review, one good reason would be if I wanted to apply EQ. Now I'm EQing the sound, the incoming sound from every single one of these devices all at once, as opposed to individually. Same thing goes with compression or effects, anything like that. So the sum of all the sounds then get that effect applied to them. So that's all the workflow tips I can think of at the moment. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try to answer them as quickly as possible. And thanks for watching. Hopefully this video was informative. Hopefully you learned something and enjoyed the video. If you liked the video, please feel free to like, share, comment, and or subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate that. And have a good day.